such a rush, my baby, slow down, come find your love. I'm hoping you see me, come serve it up. Loving when you stir it up, that body belong on TV. Oh, this feeling I can't hide. You're feeling up my mind, and I just don't know why. I just don't know why. Five lives, five lives, five lives.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me and you can see me. Let me see. Okay, loud and clear. Good evening to everyone joining from Lagos, Nigeria, and good morning, good afternoon to others joining from other parts of the world. My name is Sarah Wiche, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for joining and for joining early. We just had to, behave like Africans and give the African time what we do. But yeah, we've all been on this call right at 5 p.m. and it's a pleasure to meet you today. So thank you to those that did engage on the chat. I am still looking out for more engagement. We would really love to meet you, have an idea of where you are joining us from, what you do, and who you are. Thank you so much, Gideon, all the way from Ghana. It's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you, Jide from Badagry. It's a pleasure to meet you here also. Thank you, Nosa, for joining this call. I know you, and just seeing that name, I was just so glad. So thank you, Nosa, for joining this call. Thank you, Omalade. I see that you are currently final year student at University of Lagos studying adult education. I am so excited to have you on the call. It's a pleasure to see that at least those we're looking out and scouting for are here. So we'll just get right into it. We have so much to discuss today, but still, please keep introducing yourselves. That's the first thing about networking and meeting people for the first time. You don't want to be on this call and then just leave as if you were never here. So please write something about yourself. You don't know who can be reading through and you can catch someone's eye. So going into it for today, as I've said, my name is Sarah Luabu-Wiche, and this is a Beyond Adult Education Pathway to Corporate Learning series, and it's an initiative of the OLX, the community. And this initiative has been designed to bridge the gap between academia and corporate world, basically to bridge the gap for whoever or anyone who studied education-related programs and the corporate learning industry. And we are looking at empowering graduates and students of adult education and other education-related disciplines across African universities by providing insights into career opportunities and corporate learning and development. And in the next 3 months, we are going to be having 3 engaging panel sessions with industry experts who will be sharing their experiences and practical strategies into how they got into the industry and how you can as well thrive in the industry. So this series is open to everyone, whether you're a student, a recent graduate, or an aspiring L&D professional. And we are hoping that in this 3 parts webinar, we are going to equip you with the knowledge and resources you need to excel in the evolving world of corporate education. And in this 3 weeks, we are going to be talking about the skills, certification, and professional development pathways. You're going to be networking with industry professionals, and you will be receiving practical strategies to transition into L&D. So this is the first of the 3 sessions, and I'm glad you're here. I hope you are going to make it a date with us to complete the whole learning package. And so moving on, before we get into the session for today, I think it's nice to talk about the community that is putting this together, which is the OLXD community. So just a little insight about us for those that are joining for the first time. I could see some names that seemed like you're probably joining us for one of our initiatives for the very first time. So it's just fair that we introduce ourselves to you. So at OLXD, we are committed to fostering a culture of continuous learning and development. And we are a community made up of professionals from a wide range of backgrounds and industries that share the same passion to improve the skills and knowledge of the workforce in Africa. At OLXD, we believe that one of the best ways to grow in learning and development is to learn directly from experts in the industry, industry practitioners who have experienced enough value to share and their expertise with the world as well. We also have different initiatives where we interact with these experts, and these initiatives are designed to help you grow, learn, and network. So just a brief insight, we have our weekend webinars that we use to keep our members up to date and serve as refresher sessions on different L&D topics. We also have a thriving WhatsApp community that provides a space for you to share your knowledge, daily interactions, and real-time support on work-related challenges. It's very interesting to see that people come on the WhatsApp group and they're like, oh, please, I have this particular thing I need to submit in the next 15 minutes and I'm kind of lost. And then in the next 5 minutes, that person is getting real-time feedback to help him or her on the job. So that's what we do within our community. Then we also have conferences and hangouts that offer opportunities to build network and to build strong strategic relationships. So if you're just hearing about us for the first time, I would indulge you to check us out on social media and be a part of this functional community. I like to call it functional because yes, we are not just all talk, we actually do the work. So moving on to why we are here today, we are going to be having a session titled Getting Started in Corporate Learning, Roles and Industry. So we have a series of questions for our panelists that will be speaking to us today that has been curated by the team at OLXD. And also some questions that came in from, potential attendees when we had put out our surveys. So we had put those questions together and we are going to spend the next 1 hour thereabouts answering those questions. And just in case we do not do justice to whatever, concerns you have in your mind, you can always, ask your own questions at the end of the session if we've not been able to touch point on it. So on that note, I would like to introduce our panelists here. I know you can see their handsome and pretty faces on the screen, but let me just do the needful. So before I introduce them, I also want to use this opportunity to say a very big thank you to them for agreeing to be a part of this despite their busy schedule. And, sometimes we have people speaking to you at a time that is convenient for you. We looked at the time that is convenient for the larger part of our audience, which are Nigerians, but some of the persons on this call, trust me, this is not a convenient time for them to be on this call. So we do appreciate you for joining us from wherever you're joining us from. And I just indulge us attendees to please make the best of this opportunity, listen attentively and try to ask the questions you have. So in no particular order, I'll be introducing our panelists today. We have Victoria Ogunlade Ajishe, who is a learning and development professional, and she's a dynamic learning experience designer with expertise in educational and corporate training. She specializes in creating impactful learning solutions that drive measurable results, with a proven track record of training over 1,000 professionals and educators across Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. And she is also a master trainer and independent consultant with UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education for Peace, Sustainable Development. Victoria holds a master's degree in educational administration and planning, along with certifications in project management, product management, and EdTech leadership. It's a pleasure to meet you, Victoria. Good evening. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
moving on. Thank you. We also have on the call Dr. Ademola Ade Akinriola, who is the Director of Learning and Academics at Alt School Africa. Mr. Ade, Dr. Ade, rather, forgive me, he holds a PhD in Education Policy, Organization and Leadership. He has an MA in K-12 Education Administration and a BA in Educational Administration from the University of Lagos. And he is also a researcher who shares his research at academic conferences globally and has published his research on various reputable academic journals. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Ade. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have on the call Mr. Joseph Kayode Babalola, who is a graduate of adult education from the University of Ibadan, and he has turned his academic foundation in education into a springboard for a remarkable career spanning corporate, technological, and global landscapes. He currently serves as a team lead, digital and technology learning at FCMB, and he has worked with other leading organizations such as InterSwitch, Huda Technologies, and the Nigerian Stock Exchange. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Joseph. Welcome. Oh, yeah. I remember your warning. So nice to meet you, Joseph. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, so we are going to move on into the session today. I want to check the chat box. I hope I'm not missing anything. Okay, so we also have the links to our panelists' LinkedIn address, so you can connect with them as they speak to you, so that even if you have other reflections after the session, you can always reach out to them. So are we ready? I've been doing a lot of talking. Okay, are we ready? I want to get an emoji if we are ready. So let me check the chat box. Are we ready for the conversation? Okay. Only can't wait. I need more. All right. I need more. Okay. All right. So let's go into our conversation for today, and I'll stop sharing my screen so that our participants can see, everyone clearly. Okay. So my first question would probably be kind of take every one of the panelists some time to explain, because it's kind of lengthy, and that's because we really want to meet you outside of the corporate profile that we have just read. And I know that it's been a couple of years that you've been a student, and then now you're working in the corporate learning industry. So yes, we would like to know what it was like for you starting off your career in education. There is a stereotype in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, about studying anything education related. So how was it for you, really? Your admission into an education related course of study, then your realities during your study experience, then getting out of uni, and then building a career in corporate learning. So in specifics, I would like everyone to share, and we're going to start off with Victoria, to share your personal journey into corporate learning and what inspired your transition, or if it wasn't the transition, your decision to choose this industry, as the case may be. So we'll start with Victoria, then we'll move on to Dr. Adi and then Joseph.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So you see, when you were talking about it, I was just laughing because just like you and many people, it was not in my wildest dream to study education. You know, we used to see education as what you give to people that are not bright. And I was a bright student. I was leading my class in secondary school. But I wanted to be a medical doctor, right? As a matter of fact, I and there was a close friend of mine. We were already calling ourselves. I called her Dr. Yemi. She called me Dr. Victoria. So you know, we were aiming to be doctors. But eventually, I saw myself doing education. I was like, what? Am I going to end up like those teachers that taught me secondary school? They're looking so poor. I never wanted to be one of such. But I said, well, I want to stay at home either. So I said, okay, let me just go on and then study it. But because I was still not happy doing the course, in my second year of school, I took another JAM. That's the UTME for those of us that are not in Nigeria. I said, this education, I have to remove it. I was doing computer science and education. I said that education, in fact, the computer science was because of the computer science that I said, well, computer science. People used to go to school to learn these computing schools to learn computing, but computer science, okay, so it makes sense. But education, I need to take it to, and I applied for just computer science without the education. But then after that exam again, I wasn't still giving computer science, but another course, transport. And I was so naive at the time. That was the time when in Lagos State, they started this BSc. They were wearing this blue and all of that. And unfortunately, just like law students wear white and black, transportation students were wearing blue and black. My friends started making jest on me and say, I'm working in PRT. So I said, oh, in that case, computer science, at least computer science is better than transport. Then I stayed. Then I said to myself, if this is I'm going to do, I'm not going to be like those teachers that I used to know. I was living in denial all through my stay in the university. As a matter of fact, I did professional courses in networking, that's computer networking and all of that, because I just wanted to remove the education. So straight out of school after my NYSC, when I started applying for jobs, I was applying to banks, customer service, all of that. I wasn't just interested in education. I eventually got a job as a finance advisor, right? And I worked in that organization for about 2 years. So while I was at it, I decided to start, this personal branding. I started talking about finances, right? How to manage your finances and all of that. So I had my presence online, Instagram and all of that. And just from doing that, someone who happens to work as an HR, I think she was an assistant HR in the firm there, she invited me for my very first corporate training for an organization. It was related to finance and change management. So when I did that, there was this confidence that it brought to me. That was almost like my very first experience training adults, not children. So I had been training students in schools, and so when I did that, I felt proud. I said, wow, the feedback was good. They all wanted to have my number at the end. I said, then you can do more than this. So then I was very happy. I took pictures. I had taken my brother. I had really learned about personal branding then and the importance of that. So I had taken my brother along. I said, just help me take pictures. And he was taking pictures. I said, this is a good representation. At least there is no way, and it was a very big firm. It was one of these FMCG firms. There is no way I would stand and say I did a training for staff of this organization and nobody will say, she did well or she didn't do well. So that was my very first, should I say, evidence that I was able to do this. And it gave me some sort of confidence. And because I was still in education, teaching in the classroom, teaching students at the time, because I did computer science as well. So I was focused on multiple intelligences, STEM training and all of that. I was also doing that by the side. Remember what I was doing before on the finance one was just It was like an extra, this thing was not, it was just trying to build my personal brand, trying to find my feet at the time. So from the STEM I was doing for others as well, or STEM and STEAM, another person saw that. Now, this is outside of what I was doing regularly, like a teacher would just go to class and teach and go back home and do extra lessons. I was doing something else that showed other capabilities that I had. And it happened that our cousin was working for an organization and they need a trainer to train educators on the STEAM approach to learning. And because she had seen what I was doing, so she came and said, oh, my cousin wants to speak with you. They said they need the trainer. She didn't have the details, but she just told me, and then they sent the invite to me. No, I happened to speak with you. In fact, the guys, let's say he called me today and he said, I've given them your number already. They will call you. That day, I was even expecting a delivery, a rider was coming in. A few minutes after he dropped the call, I saw a number call. I thought it was the rider, not knowing that I was going into an interview that I never prepared for. And they were asking me, have you trained adults before? Have you done this? Have you done like a train the trainers? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? Because I was prepared, right? I was not totally new to training adults. So the experiences that I had gathered over time was very helpful for me. And then I got that deal. I was still working as an education, but as an educator in the classroom. But you know the funny thing, the deal I got that year from that job was equal to my annual salary for the year. And I only had to show up for just a week of physical training, the instructional material, develop the curriculum, and do the training that they would now eventually start working on. So those two experiences in 1 year, I said, no, this is for me. So that was what gave me the boost and the confidence to go fully into learning and development. And then I started writing proposals, and like they say, the rest is history. So that was how my, not totally a transition, but that was how I found myself in learning and development.
That was how you found yourself loving learning and development.
Yeah. Yes.
So the money factor is a thing, but yeah, I think one thing I also heard was you not, just giving up that, or you didn't get what you wanted. You tried to build a personal brand. You were showing up, and along the way, something clicked. And yeah, that's very important. So over to you, Dr. Adi. In 3 minutes thereabouts, just share with us.
Why do you have to do that? You gave her the reign, right, to say all that fabulous stuff, and now you're going to cap me at 3 minutes? We're not doing that.
Okay, so take your time.
Effective immediately, I'm changing my name to Victoria. Maybe that was going to work. Thank you, Sarah. Wow, that was phenomenal, Victoria. You sound like somebody that I would want to connect with after this. So, to see what opportunities we can collaborate on. So, good morning, everyone. It's about 10:37 here, Austin, Texas, where I live. And, my journey started in about 2004, 2005, when I read a book by Rick Warren titled Purpose Driven Life. That book planted some seeds in me. It planted a seed of intentionality, living life with a sense of purpose, direction, and being a big picture kind of a person, and thinking about posterity. So not just being obsessed with the moment, so live in the moment, but not for the moment. So that book planted those seeds in my heart. Then I jumped to 2006. So I had my ordinary, I don't know what name it's called now, but back then it was called the Ordinary National Diploma. So I was there from 2004 to 2006. I earned my national diploma in banking and finance, and so when I graduated in 2006, it would make sense, right? Graduated, then it was called upper credit. And, it would make sense that if you have a national diploma in banking and finance, that you get a job in the banking sector, right? So, spoke with a lot of folks in my network. People started looking out for jobs for me and all that. Now I can tell you it was God, but then I didn't know. So I don't know, maybe sometime in August, September that same year, I literally just woke up. I had a raggedy shirt on. The pair of jeans I wore probably belonged to my brother who now lives in Canada, and I said, you know what? I'm leaving this home and I ain't coming back home until I get a job. So I grabbed my resume, had my resume in my hand, and I started walking the streets of the slum in Lagos. I was born in the slum. I was born in Bariga. Now, so I started walking around. I don't know, maybe an hour, 2 hours of my search. I just, I would look at the very first place I see, a display of vacancy, I'll walk in there. And then I saw a private school, an elementary school I think the place is called the Laje. And then I walked into there, I told the woman, I said, hey, my name is Ademola, I need a job. And then I was not planning to interview that day, similar to Victoria. And then she was like, oh, okay, well, if you're ready, we can interview right now. I'm like, okay. And then literally, oh, look at that. Wait, don't tell me that's my older brother on the call. Are you kidding me? No way, look at that. I literally have a big brother on this call, the one I just spoke about from Canada. Wow, okay, look at that. Okay, now let's put him on eggshells. So, I walked into the office, the school, and then she tested me out. And then literally on the spot, I was asked to teach certain subjects. I taught English, I taught math. Long story short, I was offered a job. Watch these guys. So I taught elementary school kids for about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks into that job, and then this temptation came. I got a job. I got an opportunity to work with First Bank. Then the headquarters was a Marina. I was in the internal control and reconciliation department, and I got that job through someone who belonged to my church. And guess what, guys? So I left the school in the slum to join a bank. Of course, the pay was good. At the school, I earned 7,500 Naira, less than what? How many dollars today? Now, here's where I'm going, guys. Here's where I'm going. I'm trying to be as vulnerable as possible so they can see some common trends between all of our stories. But guess what, guys? Every day on that job felt like a drudgery. I hated every day on that job. And one day, 2 weeks into the job, I walked into my former director's office then, and I looked at him and I said, sir, can I please have a conversation with you? It was, okay, yeah, what do you want? I said, sir, I want to quit my job. And he looked at me, was like, you're a young man, you have a lot of potentials out of you, you're smart, you're intelligent. And then he asked me, okay, before I get ahead of myself, are you leaving First Bank of Nigeria to go to another bank? I'm like, no, sir, I'm leaving First Bank to go back to the school in the slum where I used to teach, earned 7,000 Naira. And he looked at me and he thought somebody had bewitched me. Guess what, guys? At the time, I didn't have a cell phone. So I had no idea if that job was still waiting for me. But I took a leap of faith. So he looked at me with utter disappointment that here's another talent that's going to waste. So I walked away from that job. I went back to that school in the slum and I told the woman, I said, ma'am, I don't know if my job is still waiting for me or not, but if you would give me another chance, I want to come back and I want to do this. Now, that job made me feel like a fish in water. Remember, my background was in banking and finance. I loved every day that I went to the office, to the school, teach elementary school kids, they asked me questions, I helped them understand their world and all of that. And then she gave me an opportunity and she was like, you better not mess this up. Guess what, guys? I stayed on that job, earning 7,500 Naira for the next 2 years. That job was literally what opened my eyes to realize that you can only succeed in a career that taps into your natural wiring, how you're wired, your interests, your passion, your innate, unique abilities. And I left that job to go to the University of Lagos, guess what? To study educational administration. So unlike Victoria, who wanted to be a different kind of doctor, I actually filled the JAM form wanting to study educational administration. Now, let me jump real quick, and I would later end up in having 3 degrees. I had my undergrad at the University of Lagos, and then I moved to the US more than 10 years ago. I had my master's at Michigan State, also studying education. The same education, by the way, brought me to America. And, you know, as God would have it, I can tell you, it was interestingly, Sarah, that I'm thinking about it. The professor who recommended me for the opportunity to come to America was a professor in adult education, even though I'd studied a different degree. But one of the things I want to say here, guys, is that for you to walk away with is this. I made up my mind that I was going to do everything. I was going to give my best to everything. So when my colleagues, you know, who were studying biology education, you know, whenever they wanted to introduce themselves, we say, I'm studying biology. Like Sarah, they would scrap the education part. Whenever I introduce myself to everybody, I always say, my name is Ademola, and I'm studying educational administration, because I learned that what you do is not really what matters, but it is the intentionality with which you do it. So I would have my shoulder raised up. I didn't know people were watching. Some of my colleagues will introduce themselves, my name is this, and I'm studying edu-admin. I'm like, that's not what I'm studying. I'm studying educational administration. Long story short, the same education brought me to America. And I would say my formal official experience with corporate learning started in 2018 when I was working on my PhD at the time at the University of Illinois, and I had an opportunity to work with a department called the Global Education and Training Department, where, you know, we would host multinationals and internationals from China, you know, most of the leading banks in China, and I loved that. So that was a second phase in my transition, if you want to call it that way. And, you know, I look back now, you know, and similar to Sarah, you know, what I do right now at AltSchool Africa as director of learning, I have the privilege, right, of literally directing the entire education strategy, right, and learning the learning technology, you know, for the hundreds of thousands of students, you know, from over 110 countries, you know, where AltSchool Africa actually has students from. So that's kind of like a hodgepodge of my story. I hope you all are able to pick one or two things from my story. Thank you.
Pick the 1,000 things from your story. Thank you so much, Dr. Ade. And yeah, I could hear the passion, you know, as you even spoke about it. You were so excited to go into that past. And one thing I caught from what you had said was, I think for you to even start seeing progress in anything is for you to admit it, you have to love it, and you have to own it. You have to be intentional about it. So to those that, you know, when you're talking about the fact that people would say, oh, I'm studying chemistry, when you're studying chemistry education, or you say I'm studying English, it's interesting to hear that it happened in your time and it happened in my time. So I think that's just the norm. And I hope that, you know, with programs like this, we are able to change that norm. I was never shy to say I studied adult education. In fact, I think everyone that knows me practically knows that I studied adult education, and I did also fill the form myself. So yes, I think it starts from there. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, over to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Please confirm if you can hear me, Sarah.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
All right. So I want to write on the two existing stories from Dr. Ade and Victoria. So my own background and how I venture into learning and development is kind of funny. Right from secondary school, I like teaching people. So if I know any little thing, I like to pass it across to the other person to know how to do it. So right from secondary school, I used to have like one woman that I was training. I never knew that I was studying adult education. So I was training on how to read, how to write, and all of that. So I had passion for teaching, passing knowledge. Then when I finished my secondary school, my O-level wasn't good. So back then I had to stay like 2 years at home. And some of my colleagues that I was even training in class, they've gone to universities and all of that. And I was at home, and I just met a lady, a church member, and she said, Joseph, what are you doing? Are you done with schooling? I said, me? I just finished my secondary school. And she said, would you mind going to a college of education? And I was like, wow, I will end up in college of education. But then one thing I have, like Dr. Ade said, it's not about what you study or what you do. It's about the intentionality. So I pick up the form, and when I picked up the form, I did the exam, the entrance exam. You know, it wasn't through JAM. So it was through direct, you have to write an exam. So I passed the exam. And prior to that, I had to do another GC when my O level wasn't good. So I used the GC. When I passed the exam, I picked my course. I studied political science and social studies. You know, in College of Education, you have to combine it with education. So I was a political science, social study guy in College of Education. And one thing that has helped me throughout the 3 years in my College of Education is that I don't bow my head. So when I see people that are in the university studying medicine, studying law, studying whatever, when we talk, if you meet me within 5 minutes, you would never know that I'm just a College of Education student, because I was so that was not the path I wanted to go through. But I found myself there, and I had to tell myself, you have to be the best. So from the first semester, I began to do tutorial. So I was a trainer all my 3 years. I was training people within my level, 100 level. When I was in 100 level, I was training people. When I got to 200 level, I was training my level. I was training the level below me, and I was training level ahead of me. So as at 200 level, I was training a 300 level. And my school then had this degree program, and I was also doing tutorial for some degree students, especially in political science. So teaching has always been my passion. I will go extra length, try to see what I can do to. So I've been a trainer for those 3 years. Then when I'm done, I was like, okay, I have a very good grade though. And I wanted to study. I didn't initially want to do any other thing. I just want to go into teaching. And I went into teaching. So later on, I met someone that told me, said, Joseph, the society needs at least BSc from you if you want to do anything in life. So because quote and unquote, I was very proud of being an NC graduate. There's no way you meet me when we talk about political science, about education, about social studies, you will learn one thing or the other, and I also learn from you. So I had to pick up the form then. I wasn't writing JAM because I had a very good grade. So I went through direct entry. So I look at the series of options that I have. Then I said, okay, adult education is fine. But then adult education is like, for me, before I venture to something, I like to read like rigorously about that thing. So before I picked up the form, I went to study different departments in education faculty. And I saw that adult education really is something that I would love to go with. So when I joined in 200 level and I met the 200 level transitioning into 200 level, and some of them, when they are talking, they are not proud of themselves, just like Victoria. They are not proud of themselves. They don't tell people what they are studying in their hostel. They don't. But then, and I began another tutorial session, what I was doing right from the college. So I started right from 200 level again at university. I was doing tutorial. So in the course of tutorial, I was trying to influence people that there's nothing you are doing in this world that you cannot succeed in it. It's just your attitude, and don't bow your head. Don't think that anybody is better than you. So then I started my tutorial, and from there, I know this question that people will always ask me, Joseph, what are we going to do with adult education? And when they ask that question, I'll try and give them some theoretical answers, tell them at least you have been trained as a facilitator, you can become a trainer, you can become about this. So I was trying to encourage them, and in the same time, I was encouraging myself. So, but then one thing that has helped me a lot, and I've said it, is not bowing my head. I will never think that someone is doing better in another field than what I can do. So when I finished my school, I went to service. So what brought me into corporate learning and development is one thing, is through the door of technology. And I will explain. When I say through the door of technology, when I was in service, I started training again. So I started in Kaduna because it's part of me. I like to just engage myself in training people. So I got out the students. I was training them computer appreciation. I was training them how to use graphics tools like CorelDRAW, Photoshop, and all of that, PowerPoint, and all of that. So after training them, I finished my service. I came back to Ibadan. When I got to Ibadan, I pick up my job again, which is training. And what was the job? So I went back to the school, to university. I was liaising with students, the undergraduate students, and I was training them. I was having tutorial session with them. And I was also doing some other side gigs, like some little graphic design and all of that. Then I was applying for jobs. So when I was applying for jobs, I saw a job that the main requirement was graphic design. I never knew that is going to be the turnaround for my life. So because I have the little experience in graphic design, using PowerPoint, using all of those tools, I applied for the job. I never knew that it's going to be an educational technology role as my first role after the university. Although I've thought when I finished my NC. So I applied for the job, and I was called for interview. When I was called for the interview, I can remember vividly that afternoon. When I got there, the man asked me, he said, "Joseph, what can you do?" I said, well, the requirements is I should be able to know how to use some graphic tools, and I can do it. So they said they should give me a laptop. I was given a laptop. So number one lesson I want people to learn is that you need to have something. You need to have even if it is very little. There's this framework that I have that has been guiding me, and is what I call L&D raised to power 2. And the L&D raised to power 2 means learn little things. The L is for learning. Learn little things. They may be very minute, very infinitesimal, very inconsequential. Things like PowerPoint, all of that. That's what led to my. So I told them I can do something, and they gave me a laptop. They opened a Photoshop, and they just asked me to do one little thing. Remove a background from picture, and put some text, and do some just little things. Let's be sure that you can do this thing. Then I tried to do something, and I told them, I said, this is not my best tool. And that wasn't my best tool. I was good with CorelDRAW more than Photoshop. But then they didn't have CorelDRAW. They had Photoshop. So I had to just do a little thing, and I submitted it. When I submitted that little thing, if I were to mark myself, I'll give myself 2/10. But then I showed attitude. So the attitude I showed made the man to be very wild. And it was like, okay, if you can do this, we can train you. And he asked a very simple question. And the question was that, Joseph, can you use Captivate? I've never heard of Captivate in my life. I've never read of Captivate in my life. Apparently, Captivate is one of the top e-learning tools. I said, yes, I can use it. And he looked at me. He said, Joseph, are you sure you can use Captivate? I said, yes. He said, okay, go outside. Stay outside. Stay at the corridor. So I stepped out of his office. And when I got outside, I picked my phone. I was looking for Captivate. Google was giving me a lot of things on Captivate, giving me definition of to capture attention and all of that. I said, no. I did Captivate for learning. So I couldn't pick anything within 3 minutes that he asked me to stay outside. And he said, come in. He said, but I like you because you could show others you can do something. And you do not have a spirit of I cannot do. So he said, I know, Joseph, you don't know Captivate, but we'll train you. So I said, truly, I don't know Captivate, but I can learn it. So he said, okay, we'll train you. So for a week, I was trained on how to use Captivate. Then after that 1 week, the second week was for projects, and I went extra mile. I was able to do beyond and exceeding some of my colleagues that were in the same training, about 10 of us or so. And the second week, when the project was on, I had to come up with something very unique that we were not even trained in the training. I built an app, a small app with Captivate. And the man was so wild and like, Joseph, this is what you can build. With this thing, we just taught you within a week. And that is how my journey began. So I started through technology by training people and also using technology to come in. So another lesson is that some job description may not necessarily capture everything. It may just be some skill that you have that it will be the pathway to enter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So from graphics design to team lead digital and technology learning at FCMB, I think that's a very interesting story. And yes, thank you so much. So it's a case of just making sure that you are paying attention to the skills you have. And the learning and development industry is one dynamic industry where the word coming to my mind right now is anything can sell as much as you know how to package it. So yes, thank you so much for sharing. So I'll be moving on to my next question. And okay, and this question goes to Victoria. So in just say 2 minutes, we have a lot of questions and I'm trying to cut the time. So I know that looking at your background and also your experience, you have experience in both traditional education and corporate learning. So over the years, what will you say are the key differences in these two? Because most times the problem is that people think for you to go into corporate L&D, what am I doing there? All I know is how to teach, how to write lesson notes and, you know, teach children. So what do I have that can take me into this industry? And my question is, for you, based on your experience, what are the key differences in both worlds? Will you say that there are some principles that apply to one and doesn't apply to the other? Or is it a case of, you know, easy transitioning of skills and, you know, abilities?
Thank you, Sarah. So I was absolutely very easy to transition from education to corporate learning. In fact, so many of the theories that are there in corporate learning, we already learned them in school. We were taught those theories of learning in school already, right? The only difference now is that you are not training children or students. That's for those that did not do adult education. You are now training adults. Now, unlike in traditional education, where the goal is to train students, and then at the end of the day, they are sitting for assessment for you to measure what you've learned, what they've learned, and how they are progressing. When it's adult education, well, so I've done adult education in EdTech, digital school, training children, people how to use digital tools or learn digital skills, and also corporate organizations, right? So in that case, it's because they are trying to get a skill. Now, in measuring that one, it is not just assessments. They want to practicalize it. They want to build a portfolio. They want to be able to compete in the marketplace. That's when it comes to EdTech training for digital skills acquisition. But when it comes to the corporate space, that one, you are still using the same theories of learning that you have learned, but in this case, you are not training them because they want to write an assessment. You're training them because they are now in an organization. They have goals or targets that has been set for them. They will be measured against this assessment during their appraisals, their key performance index that you use to measure the progress based on the learning that you have provided for them. Now, to make it easy for these people, because they would not come in every day like your typical children in the classroom and sit for you to train them, right? You need to now gather different means and processes for it to be easy for them to combine that learning with their actual work. Do you understand? So that's another difference between traditional learning and then corporate learning. So you are looking at creating a specific curriculum using e-learning tools, using authoring tools, using micro learning, that is making what would have seemingly taken time for them to learn and then trying to make it bite-sized so that it's easy for them to understand a concept that is being taught and implement it immediately on the job. So you also are able to measure the progress. So those are some key elements or key differences in traditional learning and corporate learning that people need to, you know, have at the back of their mind when they are thinking of transitioning. Another major challenge that some people might have is, but I did biology education, or I just did adult learning. So if I'm supposed to work as an L&D professional, say at a bank, or how would that, I don't know anything about banking, I don't know anything about accounting. Now you're thinking that you need to know that. In most cases, you don't need to know, because one beautiful thing about L&D is that you can work in any organization, and that does not mean that you have to be an expert in that field. So that is where collaborating comes into play. So you need to work with subject matter experts. You also need to do something called the needs analysis. What exactly are we trying to achieve, right? What exactly is the gap that this employee has that will want, what's the goal? What's the learning goal? What is the goal of the organization? What does this person know now? What is he supposed to know? When you have that, then okay, you don't have the knowledge, but you know someone that is an expert, either within the organization or outside of the organization, that can do that training. In some cases, some organizations, they allow them come in to do the physical training. Why that is good, it is not when we use it as a standalone, it might not be the best, right? Considering that they need to leave the work that they are doing to go and do that. So your own job now, as a forward-thinking L&D practitioner, is to look at how you can gather that information, either from the physical training that's already been held, right? And then look for how to repackage it using either an authoring tool or, you know, just creating a simple micro-learning and then creating like a pathway or like a timeline for them to complete it, and measuring, monitoring, and evaluation. And at the end of the day, you can track the progress. I hope I'm not using too many terminologies, but it's, you know, just basically the
No.
difference that you see in education and corporate learning.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, I do appreciate the use of terminologies, because I think that way people are paying attention and putting those things down so that they can also do their own research on these things later. Thank you so much, Victoria. I hear you, and you know, you say it's the same learning principles. It's the same principles you use to teach a child that you would use in the corporate world, though we call them different names, pedagogy and andragogy, but understanding that you're teaching a child because there is a learning gap that you want to meet is also the same experience within the workplace. There is a gap on the job skill that the person is supposed to have, and your position as a learning and development professional is to identify where that gap is and, you know, help them fill in that gap. And also, thank you for adding that there is no industry that you cannot thrive. As much as you are experts that understand the principles of learning, you can always work with a subject matter expert in that industry to deliver, you know, efficient learning. Thank you so much. Now I want to ask Dr. Ade the same question, but in a different context. Now, you know, you work at Oxford Africa as a director. You are an expert in curriculum and learning experience, and now you are leading the entire learning and academics at Oxford Africa. So I would say that when you're looking for members or for people to join your team, what skills do you look out for? Because sometimes we think that these skills are outside of education-related, you know, courses, and so graduates of education-related courses don't even bother checking this JDs when they see job postings. Like, okay, this thing is for the corporate world. It's not a teacher role. So what are those skills that you look out for that graduates of education-related courses already have, and they can highlight when they are pursuing corporate learning roles?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Thank you, Sarah. And I've had to hire actually a couple of roles. So, for example, I knew when I joined, when the CEO asked me, and interestingly, I didn't apply for this job. The CEO and I met, and it was supposed to be a casual conversation. I'd never known him before. It was supposed to be like a 30-minute dinner, and just casual conversation, two strangers wanted to just connect, and then 30 minutes became like, well, almost 2-3 hours. And then that was the last I heard of Adewale. And then some months later, I'll see a DM from him, and then here we are. Here's where I'm going. The very first L&D related role that a position that I hired was the curriculum designer. You know, and Victoria is correct. I think one of the biggest challenges a lot of younger folks who are trying to get into this space don't understand is how to tell their story in a way that would appeal, right? You know, to professionals or employers who actually need their skill set. So the very first thing you want to, that I'm looking out for is somebody who's able to, translate what it is that you've done. And I'm going to give some practical examples, right? What exactly you've done into what we call value prop. So permit me, if I'm sounding more business-ish, but, I do a lot more of that now. So number one, I knew when I wanted to hire my first curriculum designer, that role never existed at Alt School Africa. I literally was the one who said, hey, get me this person. For what I'm trying to do, for the revolution I'm trying to bring to Alt School Africa, I need a curriculum designer, right? And so I was looking at somebody who had a background at the intersection of education, right? But also technology. When I say technology, I'm not using that as a cliche, in a cliched way. I mean, I wanted somebody who appreciates how technology can actually help you to achieve, what we call one-to-many skill, one-to-many instead of one-to-one, right? So, of course, the basic things are the critical thinking, problem solving. But beyond that, I wanted that. I also wanted to have somebody or people who, and interestingly, I just made an offer to another candidate, to join my new role that I'm hiring, that I just hired for actually 2 days ago. And the lady's going to be joining my team on the 17th of March. So I know I've had to hire a curriculum designer, I've had to hire a curriculum specialist, which is like 1 or 2 steps above. Then I've also had to hire a curriculum consultant. So let me tell you, with the curriculum consultant, what I wanted somebody, who, because part of the so I did when I would say about 6 months into my role, one of the things I did was to set up what I call a curriculum review committee, where my goal was to ensure that this committee will report to me, but that they would ensure that everything that is learned and taught at Alt School Africa remains at the cutting edge of the industry, right? So essentially, I wanted to ensure that, our curriculum remains pertinent to the skills of the future, right? So we'll leverage, data on, future of work, data, right? And then translate those into skill sets. So I wanted somebody, who, of course, not only was smart, but somebody also understands the importance of working in a startup culture, right? And that's one of the things that I think I've noticed with a lot of folks who have that education background. Yeah, you understand the principles of learning, but you don't understand its applicability. Now, trust me, it doesn't matter to me if you know all the principles of adult education. What I'm seeking when I'm interviewing candidates, and I mean, not to sound like a braggart, but at this level of my role, I don't do entry-level interviews. I'm literally the final guy who decides, whether or not I want to hire based on the recommendation of my interview, the interview committee that I've set up. So I notice a lot of folks, to me, it doesn't matter to me if you have mastery of these principles of adult education, how instructional design is done, how curriculum development is done. But what I'm looking out for is that how will this skill set that you have, how will they help me achieve at least 3 things? Drive up top line for my company. Top line is revenue, literally, right? So number 2, how would that help me to achieve, because of the industry that I operate in, retention rate is one of the data that I track. How would that help me, to increase retention and reduce churn-out? So when I'm listening, when I'm going through your resume, and your LinkedIn profile based on recommendation that my team folks have, one of the persons that reports to me is a senior program manager, right? Dr. Ade, okay, here and here are the reasons why we think we should consider this person. What I'm trying to find is, I'm trying to draw a nexus between all that you've done, right, and this thing. So drive up top line, that's revenue. And then number 2, how are you going to help ensure that the company that I currently work for, which is Alt School Africa, remains the #1 destination in Africa and one of the top 10 in the world for people who want to reskill and upskill. So I'm trying to find those, connections. So a lot of times what people just do is they describe all the things they've done. You see what I'm saying, Sarah? Right? Oh, I've got experience facilitating, training thousands of people. Okay, yeah, I've got experience, training, blah, 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 blah. But my question is, if I'm not seeing things about, okay, how will that help me when I bring you on as a curriculum consultant to do what? To jack up the revenue, make sure our brand equity is strong, increase productivity, right, drive up retention. So if I can't find those things, you're not going to be my candidate. So I think one major thing that I believe your team, you know, you guys have done a lot of work that you can do in helping a lot more younger professionals in education is to understand how to craft their own story, how to tell their stories in a way that will communicate clear value props. And let me give you some examples. Now, Austin is literally the next Silicon Valley of the world, next to San Francisco. You know, literally, I've got Amazon not far from me. I see Dell when I drive. I see Visa. I see Meta. I see all these tech companies. And a lot of time, because I operate in this ecosystem, I'm seeing roles every now and then. A lot of these guys, you know, I've seen roles literally at Microsoft, I've seen roles at Visa. And when I go through these job ads, one of the things that run concurrent, a common denominator, is what they're asking for is, how will your skills help us drive up the top line? That is very important. So if they're not telling me that, you can't work with me. Because at the end of the day, we're not a charity organization. So how do you tell your stories? I've got a few recommendations if that would work. For example, instead of just saying that, you know, so on curriculum design, instead of saying, you know, that, you know, learning, instead of describing your skill in curriculum design as, you know, skill in learning program, you know, development and instructional design, you can say something like, you know, like corporate training or program development, right? So instead of saying teaching and lecturing, right, you know, you can say training, facilitation, and employee development. Instead of saying something like research and writing, you can say learning, analytics, and performance improvement. You see what I'm trying to say? These are terminologies that can, so whether it's what, oil and gas, manufacturing, education, ed tech, fintech, these are our terminologies, because what that tells the person, in this case, me, right, is this person understands how their skills translate into the metrics that we measure. Another example is, instead of saying student advising and mentoring, which, you know, from what Joseph and I did as well, when I was at the University of Lagos undergrad, I also tutored. I tutored folks at my level. I tutored those on them. That was actually where I started from, but time didn't permit me to say all that. So instead of saying things like, you know, student advising, mentoring, or tutoring, you can say things like talent development, right? So don't say, oh, you know, I've got 5 years of experience teaching students and, you know, adults. Instead of saying adult, use the word talent. You see what I mean? Because that literally is the lingua in most of the, and trust me, most of the top 50 countries in the world, Fortune 550 are either tech-driven or tech companies. I say that again, tech-driven or tech companies. So instead of saying assessment and evaluation, which is one of the things that we do, you can say something like training effectiveness and ROI, you know, measurements. ROI is return on investment. When I hear that, I'm like, okay, this person understands the importance of returns on investment. But guess what? It was the same skill, right? You know, we call it formative, summative assessment, you know, but to the tech person, they don't get that. What they understand is return on investment. So I can go on and on and on, but for the sake of time, I'm going to cap it at this. And I'm open to follow up.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, because I think this 1 hour 30 minutes wouldn't do justice to it. But thank you so much. And one thing I hear you say is use the right terminologies. Now, there are some ways some things are said within the traditional education system, but those same things apply within corporate learning, however, in different terminologies. So when you're selling yourself, when you're putting your CV together, realign those examples in the way that speaks the language of your potential employer. So thank you so much. I know he has said a lot of terminologies. I hope some of us have taken notes and, you know, find the way of matching that. You know, because of time, I also can't go into stories, but, you know, when you were speaking, I was also reflecting. I went from the schooling system into non-for-profit. But one thing I know that I try to do well and pay attention to is when I'm telling my stories. All the story I have is about traditional education, teaching students. But when I'm telling the story, I'm being very careful that I'm speaking in the language that they understand. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, so okay, yeah, I can see Victoria and Joseph now. I think I lost them on my screen. But yes, this question is for Joseph. So we want to bring this home to adult education students in the room. How do you think that they can effectively market their transferable skills? Being that you studied adult education, how can they market their transferable skills into corporate learning? Mr. Ade has, given some insight, but yes, you can shed more light into, how they can put together what they have and transfer that, market it in the corporate learning industry.
Okay, so there are a lot of skills, like that has been said. There are a lot of things that we've been taught in school that we can actually apply to sell. So one of them is as little as ability to write your lesson plan. So lesson plan is something that when I was in school, I don't like writing lesson plan. So let me confess.
Nobody does.
I don't like writing lesson plan, but then I know how to write it very well. So what I did was to keep a template. Then I used to have a template for one of the best lesson plan templates that was then. I don't know now. So I kept the template then, and it helped me when I moved into corporate learning and development. So everything you do when you're writing a lesson plan, you also need it when you're writing a content. Starting from behavioral objectives and breaking down content into from simple to complex, ensuring there's evaluation, ensuring that there's teaching aids, there's in between your lessons, you are putting the right thing, you are not, and you understand the level of your students. Likewise, in the corporate world, you must understand all of these things. If you understand how to write a good lesson plan, is a transferable skill to corporate learning. Because as an L&D specialist throughout your career journey, maybe when you get to Dr. Ade's level as a director, a very senior person, you may not write again. But then if you don't understand that thing, you will still not be able to vet what they are doing for you. So you need, number one, to know how to write your lesson plan. So for those students that are on this call and they don't like lesson plan like myself, you may not like how to write, but know all the principles and know it. Like when they wake you up from sleep, you can actually write it. That's one of those things. Another thing is your ability to manage students. So you also need it in corporate learning. You need to manage people. But now you are not managing younger people, you are managing adults, and adults are more stubborn. Permit me to use that word. They have more experience than you at times. Some of them have been in the industry before you finish your secondary school. So you need to learn how to manage people. Those times when we're in school, when I was in classroom teaching, and sometimes I'm not saying this so that you can like me. Some of my students like me because I like to deal with everybody individually. So I believe so much that no two students are the same. And in adult education, we are taught that everyone is educable. Educable in the sense that there's nobody that can be trained. There's nobody that cannot be educated. You also need that in corporate learning. There's no how you have to manage a lot of people. You manage mid-level people, you manage entry level, you manage senior managers. Some will tell you, come to my office at a very odd hour. You need to know how to manage conversation, manage emotions, manage your time, all of that. There are a lot of transferable skills that we can continue to say, but because of time. And another thing I want to say, because before this section, I had to go and dig my transcript, my school transcript, to look at some of the subjects that we were taught in school. And I practically, there is none of those things that we were taught then that is not being useful now. Things like statistics in adult education. So ability to use simple statistics, descriptive statistics, it will help you just learn how to use Excel a bit, and know how to use one or two tools. And thank God we're even in the age of AI, but you still know you need to guide the AI so that you can get the best results. So ability to transfer your statistic knowledge and skill into corporate learning, because like Dr. Adi said, the language of the business is results, is performance, is are you bringing in the money, is your learning transferring into skills, and are the skills helping our employees to actually do better on their job. So you will need all of those skills, ability to calculate your ROI, whether qualitatively or quantitatively. But then you must be able to do a presentation in such a way that the management will see you not as someone that is just a waste, because so many people, like Dr. Adi said, so many people don't know how to tell their story when they want to present to the management. You need to know how to craft a story that you, there's this adage that if you are very good with crafting story, you can sell even ice to those that, so you need all of these skills. There's nothing I've not had any conversation with management in my career life, and I can say boldly, and it's outrightly rejected because there's something they want to hear. They don't have time. They just want to hear the language of the business. And if you don't know how to do that, right from transferring some of these skills that you learned in school, you will be having some problems, and you'll be having some rejection when you want to make a proposal to the business or to the management. Should I go on, or that's
Thank you so much. You're already teaching us. I could feel that teacher spirit in you, just shining. Thank you so much. And yeah, I love what you did. You built on what Mr. Ade said, and you were speaking, the language of the teachers. You were talking lesson plan, managing students, attendance, and things like that, assignments, assessments. So it's really the same thing. It's just for people to understand that there is nothing that they've used that is not applicable. I also remember that once in a while, I still do go back to some of my textbooks, my adult education textbooks, if I want to get something, because it's still the same story. While there might have been, evolution of ideas and, technology and all, there are some things that are called principles that would always be. And even if there is advancement to those principles, you still need to understand where it started from. And thank you for adding, speaking a bit about AI as well. While we are talking to people that want to transition in this age, understanding of the place of AI, even for learning practitioners, is very important. A learning practitioner that is not, vast in prompt engineering would struggle. Even if you know all the principles and all, because now people like Dr. Ade are looking for those that can do the work faster and more efficient, and you can do that with AI. So thank you for adding that. So that's fine. So I have two questions, then we would go to the room for questions. So this question applies to everyone, and we want to look at misconceptions. I know we've probably spoken about some of this, in the course of our conversation, but I would give everyone a chance to mention at least two, misconceptions about the corporate learning space for newcomers, what they should be aware of. Everyone on this panel, the panelists so far, all have over 10 years of experience within the industry and more. So in your understanding, what are the common misconceptions people have about the corporate learning space that you think, because you are there, you hear these things and then you're laughing like, if only you knew. So yes, what are those misconceptions that you can help us debunk on this call? So I would start with Dr. Adi. I think you're the first on my screen.
Okay, I thought you were going to lead with the woman, Ms. Victoria. Okay, so I'd say number one is that only HR professionals can work in corporate learning. That's probably the biggest, and I'm glad, Ms. Victoria has given me the nod. That is one that I knew that even I mean, do have an an HR background, you know, in Michigan, but that's the biggest one. That's not true. It's not true. And then, like I mentioned, you know, there are a lot of roles that exist outside of that HR space, you know. And one thing I didn't mention was, I remember in November, part of my job at All School is to look at, again, I look at the future of work in the next 5 years, and I'm asking some key questions. What kinds of jobs, you know, and honestly, Sarah, you and Demola, you guys didn't do a good job. You should not bring the three of us into this space and give us an hour, 30 minutes. Don't do it. Like, no, you're doing a great disservice, right, to our audience. So look at the future of data, the future of work data, and then say, what kinds of jobs will open up in the next 5, 10 years? And then question 2, what kind of skills and knowledge will be needed to power those jobs? And then how can I translate the combination of skills and knowledge 5, 10 years from now into learning experience, you know, for people literally who come to us? Now, and that's not an HR job. That's an HR function. You see what I'm trying to say? When I was launching the cybersecurity program, I was one who hired the curriculum consultants, you know, who's a friend of mine, who worked then at the time was one of the top level person at cybersecurity guy at TikTok, and now works with Bloomberg. I was one who hired the technical script writers. Now, when Mr. Joseph was talking about lesson plan, of course, I don't, it's been like many years since I wrote that now, right? But I understand the principles, and that's very important. And because I understand the principles, when I see a good lesson plan, when I see an AI-generated lesson plan, that doesn't have the human touch, I can say, nah, I'm never interviewing you, I'm literally. So that's not HR. You see what I'm trying to say? That exists outside of it. That's you, an adult education undergraduate. That's you, an adult education professional. You already have that. So that's one misconception. And then the second misconception is that, you know, corporate training is, you know, like classroom teaching. And this is absolutely fallacious. It's the reason why, again, I said what I said earlier on. I don't want to see a resume and you're talking about lesson plans, you know, designing andragogy. I understand andragogy, even though I know what andragogy is, you know, is about. But again, when you would write or you would submit a resume like that to a job in tech or ed tech where I work, for example, when you think that corporate learning and classroom learning or classroom teaching are the same thing. The principles are the same, but the environments in which the principles are applied are not the same. So when you have that misconception, right, you would present your resume, again, like Mr. Joseph said, if you were applying to teach, I can understand when you're utilizing, you know, all that. But when you, I would say understand when to put on your chameleon self. Let me put it that way. Let me say that again, right? Understand when to put on your chameleon self, meaning when you need to use andragogy, and when you need to use, you know, best practices, principles to, you know, for talent development, that kind of, it's still the same thing. Are you with me? So those are the two that I would like to highlight. Maybe the third one very quickly is, you know, that employees do not value corporate training, right? And this is not true. Employees would only not value corporate training when they can't answer the question of what's in it for me. How is this going to help me to unlock the next phase of my career? I mean, you know, if I wanted to ask right now on this call, you know, all our undergrads who are, you know, in the audience, if I wanted to ask you, for example, what is the difference between reskilling and upskilling? I might not be surprised if close to 50% of people don't even know the difference. So I'm saying that you would lead with that misconception that employees don't value corporate training after I'm just a trainer, I only know how to tutor, when you don't understand that employees do not hate corporate training because they hate it, but they will question one that doesn't help them answer the question, what's in it for me? How does this help me to move from being a program manager to a senior program manager, right? or from that to, from a director, for example, to a VP, if that possibility exists in your organization. So let me cap it at those three for now, and then I'm going to let Ms. Victoria and Mr. Joseph add more to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So over to you, Victoria. So misconceptions.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I was going to talk about the HR bit, but I'm glad that was the first thing you mentioned. And the funny thing about this is it's not only those that are looking to be employed that have this misconception. Even those who are looking to hire also have the same misconception. And then you will see the list of requirements, and they are telling you if you don't have an HR background, do not apply. Or if you don't have the CIPM, do not apply, and all of that. And I'm like, what? Like you mentioned, you already explained it and why some of these roles are not even HR roles. So that's a major misconception. Now, to be safe, because of course we should be lifelong learners, right? So I would advise anyone who is able to, go for those certifications to actually go for it. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have those certifications, you will not be able to get the jobs. Because currently, I do not have any of such HR certifications, but I've been practicing for a while. The second one is that some people think that L&D or corporate training is just about they're just teaching, or it's just about teaching, it's just about training. But there's a lot more that goes into it. It's not just about designing curriculums. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. There's a lot of coaching that goes into it. There's a lot of performance consulting that it's quite a lot. So it's not just, I have to design the curriculum and bring the subject matter. There's a lot of strategy. You're thinking about the business. You're thinking about the return on investment. You're thinking of, in fact, it's almost like you are the owner of the business itself, because at the end of the day, if whatever it is that you have created does not, give the results, the desired results, then it's more like a waste of money to the business owners and all of that. So it doesn't just stop at training. Of course, we've been saying there are transferable skills, but in addition to the transferable skills, make sure that you have the ability to think critically, and bring in the ability to strategize, to think on the spot. Of course, principles work well, but some principles might not work in your own scenario, your own situation. So you should be able to be adaptable. Adaptability skill is key, and look at what exactly works for your own environment. So don't be that person that is stereotyped, and then you think it's just about training, and as long as I have the best SMEs, as long as I have the best curriculum, then I'm a good. No, it doesn't work that way. So that's another misconception that I believe that we should trash in the bin.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Joseph.
Okay, one of these other misconception is that the L&D guy or the L&D team is solely responsible for employee learning. So it's a great misconception, thinking that the L&D guy or the L&D team, they are the only one responsible for employee learning. Employee learning goes beyond scheduling training, sending you LMS course, sending you notification. There should be a culture of learning that everybody should partake in as an individual, right from the management down to the least person within the organization. So managers have a role to play in employee learning. Leaders have a role to play in employee learning. And when we work together as L&D specialists with managers and with management and leaders, then we can build an organization that has a very robust learning culture. Because when you look at what people think, they will just think that the L&D guy is not trying enough, and that's why the organization, we don't have a good culture. The manager, there are some things that is not training that will solve it. It's just the attitude of the manager or one guy within the team. So it's an overall something. It's not just about sending somebody for a training, scheduling them for a training. That's one misconception, that L&D team is solely responsible for learning. Number one, as an adult, you are responsible. Managers are responsible. The culture of the organization is responsible. If you're in a toxic environment, learning will just be ticking the box. So that's another thing, is that e-learning is not as effective as so I don't want to go into that argument, but then it's a misconception that e-learning cannot be as effective as so we have there are nuances and there are issues, but if those issues are taken care of, like what we are doing now is e-learning. What we are doing now is e-learning, it's a virtual learning. We are using electronic an electronic means to learn, and I'm very sure this is very effective. If the proper assignment has been done, you don't just give people training. In adult education or in education generally, they taught us something about needs. So there's something they call assume needs. So you don't just assume that this is compliance team. What they will need is how to monitor. No. You need to have a conversation with them. And from that, you do a proper learning needs analysis. When they talk to you, you talk back to them as a professional. You tell them, you advise. And from that, you'll be able to come up with a particular course. Because the way, and permit me if I'm biased, the way L&D is going, the future is purely digital. So like Victoria said the other time, some companies are not even doing physical training again. So you need to know how to make sure that the way you manage a classroom training, you can, in a particular way, transfer those skills, engage people, don't give them something that is too boring, don't give them something that does not meet their need. We are in a world whereby people's attention is between 1 minute to 3 minutes. Don't just don't burden them with a lot of content. Make sure that what you are giving them is just in time and it's something that's relevant to them. Don't just give them anything. So e-learning is very effective. It's a misconception that e-learning cannot be effective. It can be very effective if proper assignment has been done. Thank you. I've said two. Do you want me to add one more?
No. So okay. I want us to be very we promised them 6:30, but it's really been a very interesting conversation. And yes, I would want to, keep my last question for now, just to give somebody in the room that has like a specific question to ask, and I've just been waiting for that time to do so. So please, I'll open the floor now for questions. Just 2 persons, if you have questions to ask. And while that is going on, also, we are going to have the feedback form for this session on the, filling it while we round up. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. I see Femi Odunaike's hand up. So Femi, please unmute and speak.
All right, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Question is, Dr. Ade, how do you ensure or encourage All School Africa to balance both internal and external L&D, learning and development? Yeah, that's my question.
Could you refine it for me? I want to be sure I understand.
Okay, yeah. How do you encourage and ensure that the balance internal and external learning? Because they both train. How do you train your staff and also ensure? Because all school trains outside. Yeah. So
okay.
Yes. You mentioned hiring curriculum designers and those roles. How do you ensure that they are not left behind?
Okay, I think I'm hearing 2 questions, and I want you guys to help me. So when you say balance, what do you mean balance? Forgive me. I've not had coffee this morning
from the outside view, it will seem like the main focus is the EdTech training others.
Okay.
So
okay,
I just want to,
I think.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can help Femi, so he's asking that how do you make sure that you're intentional about staff's learning, because you're also a learning provider, so you're providing learning to your clients. So how do you keep that balance, paying attention to your clients and also making sure that learning is happening internally for staff?
Got it. Oh, okay. All right, that's much better. So we have a people and culture department. And what our people and culture department does is the HR part of that. So it's more of the that department does more of our internal, right, L&D stuff. And then the department that I head does everything else that you see. Like literally, there's nothing that will launch at Allsquare Africa to the glory of God that doesn't pass through my table, that I don't have to 2FA, right? Say, hey, okay, no, this is good, this is not good. So that's kind of like how it operates. And now we've begun, but we do collaborate. So for example, I know I was in a phone call yesterday with our CEO, and it was talking about how, we want to start doing some, trainings on AI for staff members, and we're going to give an ultimatum for staff members. Okay, hey, we're giving you like 6 months for you to, reskill, right? In this area. So I would say it's a collaborative. So if I wanted to go straight, it's a collaborative approach. Although we have two buckets, I focus more on literally the client-facing one. So whether that's B2B or B2C or B2C, or B2G, we do all three, right? B2E. So I focus more on all of that, and then our people and culture team focuses more on the internal one, right? Internal L&D. But of course, there are times when we collaborate, right? Because that's literally the nature of the 21st century workplace, cross-functional collaboration. So that, I think that does it, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. So yes, I think it's internally rests more with the learn and development director for internal
Okay.
learning. Yeah,
Right.
more of that.
The
Thank
external
you
is
so
more,
much.
right.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we'll take Gideon and Omalade, and this is me just pleading with those on the call. We are going to wrap up before 7, and I think it's very important that we listen to your own questions, and that's why we're still here. So Gideon, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Gideon, we can't hear you now.
Hi. Yeah, so my question has to do with return on investment. How do you present to management the impact of your training, as in actual metrics, maybe with figures or numbers or stuff like that, to let them know that the investments they made into whatever learning and development initiatives, these are the direct returns they are having? Because it seems a bit hard for me to be able to let management know, as in it's hard for me to know what metrics to put in to calculate the return on learning or the return on investment.
Very interesting question. Thank you so much, Gideon. Who is your question for, though?
Please, anyone can answer. It's not directed to any particular panelist.
Okay, so we do have a session that's dealt like in-depthly into the issue of return on investment, and I'm sure the link will be shared in the chat soon. But I'll just give Joseph a few minutes just to answer briefly.
Okay, thank you, Gideon. So the conversation around return on investment
It's a long one.
is a very long one. And the way you are looking at it, or the way we professionals most times look at it, is not what the business wants. What the business wants is, in 2024, we made 40 billion. In 2025, we must make 40 times 2 or times 3. And if you go to management and say, our training budget for the year is 500 million. Last year, they spent 300 million or 400 million, and there was deficit for the company. The company will not take you serious, because what they will be saying is that if you have trained these people and these people cannot transfer the skills or the training to bring more money. Money is what the business, that's what the business is set up for. There's nothing else. So in a way, it's very dicey. And most of the times you've done your best as a professional, but then the best is not translating into business results. But then, are there metrics for your trainings? So it starts from the need for the training, the need for the training. So when you're setting up a training, you don't just set up a training, or you don't just come up with training plan. It has to align with the goal of the business for the year. So what's the goal of the business? If the goal of the business is to establish more branches, make more money, do all sort of things like that, I think whatever skill set or whatever training that you'll be planning for the workforce, whether when you are interviewing them or when you are setting up their training, it should, in one way or the other, at the back of your mind and at the front of your mind, you must have a conversation around the reason why we want you to learn these skills is so that you can be more effective and be able to do this job better. I will cite an example, for example, the customer experience team. So, and that which is a very perfect example. If you are training a customer experience team on how to attend, to be more emotionally intelligent, how to be efficient, time management, and your customer feedback is going bad. Let's say you have 4.5 as your metrics last year, and this year, at the end of this year, you have 3.5. Definitely, the business will say you have not trained them. There's nothing you can tell them. Send them all the training links, send them all the materials you've developed, send them the LMS, whatever. They don't want to do it. So that's why when we are engaging staff, there should be this conversation that this is not just for getting certificates or just a while away time or a time out of work. It's actually for business. The purpose why we are training you, and I know that sometimes some people will request for some training that does not have a business goal. But then if it's something within your purview to control, you can control. If you can't control, just let it be. But then you must ensure that your presentation is actually pointing to the skills that will ensure that the goal of the business is achieved. So if after pointing that the business is still doing bad, then the business will have to check other things. It could be technological issues.
Yeah.
But then you must be able to show the business that we said in 2024, we are going for digital transformation, and we have trained our staff in this. And from what we have done, we've been able to see that our staff have been properly trained in this stuff. Now, for them to now not meet that goal is another factor. You know, organization is a system. It has various parts, and one part affects the other in one way or the other.
Yeah.
You can be trained, you could have done your part as an L&D person, yet it's just because a particular tool that ought to have make efficiency to improve is what the management is not willing to purchase.
Yeah.
So just make sure that your training is aligned to business goal, and when you are presenting the end of the year, you are showing 1, 2, 3, 4 that speaks to that. So most of the time, the quantitative aspect is very difficult, but you should be able to explain and tell a story. And that's what Dr. Ade said. You should be able to craft a story around what you have done, what you are doing currently, and what you think, even if it's not achieving it now, in the next few years, is going to be able to achieve it. I don't know, maybe Dr. Ade wants to add.
Sarah, can I add something to that quick? Do you mind?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Joseph. And I was mapping down some things. So number one, to build on what he said, one of the misconceptions or one of the errors that L&D folks make is to assume that increased, or let me back up, is to measure the effectiveness of their training by increased performance. Your goal is not necessarily increased performance, because increased employee performance is not necessarily the same thing as the achievement of business objectives. And that's what Mr. Joseph was saying. So it's kind of like look at it this way. You have training, you have increased performance / increased productivity, and then on the continuum, you have the achievement of business objectives. If your training does not impact the achievement of business objectives, trust me, not only is your budget going to be downsized, you're most likely going to be without a job. And that's what he was saying, that we've got to embrace a paradigm shift from, after all, performances are going up. The fact, let me give you a good example. So at Oscar Africa, we use the OKRs framework. Now, you know that we have different types of objectives, right? You literally can have strategic objectives that do not necessarily impact organizational goals.
Yeah.
There's a difference between in product development and design. Again, permit me, okay? But I'm sure you guys, and whatever is not familiar to you, just go look it up. There's a difference between what we call a painkiller product and a vitamin product. You've got to understand that as long as your training is a vitamin product, you may not have a job. But you've got to ensure that your training is what you construe of your role as not just designing programs that serve as vitamins. So vitamins are, you know what? Like what Mr. Joseph said, when you're thinking vitamins-ish, we are thinking of certifications. Oh, we trained 100,000 people. Awesome. And guess what? Their performances went up. Awesome. But the question I'm asking as a top level management is, how did that help us in, let's say, in achieving the objectives that we set for our Q1? So let me give a very business case. I'm giving an example. There was a time when, I started, my co-founders whom I work with directly, would reach out to me and say, hey, we have a number of student attrition, as a result of poor staff communication. That's a business case. Are you following me? And, like Mr. Jason, I don't know if Victoria is still on the call. Now, because of the nature of my space, which is EdTech, a drop in retention literally means loss of top line. Are you guys following me? So when that came to me, poor communication was a problem. So what I had to do was in training the staff, my staff, are you guys with me? My goal was not to train them to be better communicators, professional communicators. What was my goal? My goal is to address what? The problem of retention, which automatically means achievement of business objectives. Are you guys following me? So it's not enough. So when I was designing the training for them, even though the what I call the means to an end is the communication problem, my end was to address the problem of top line. So in designing that, I needed to ensure that all of the training objectives directly would impact what? Retention. So at the end, I was not measuring the effectiveness of my training by, how many staff members now better communicate. I was measuring the effectiveness, which was Gideon's question, but do we still get complaints, or do we still have learners who want to drop out of alt school because of poor communication? As long as that problem persists, my training is ineffective. Are you guys with me? So you need to embrace that paradigm shift. I'll run through the continuum once again. Your training, you have increased performance or increased productivity, but you literally must end with the achievement of business objectives. And I mentioned 3 that I'm going to like to reiterate. Number 1, top line, market share, and brand equity. If your training doesn't impact these 3 things, you might not be with a job. You might not have a job for long.
Thank you so much. I love what's going on here. And what is going on here is that we've gone from introducing newbies into L&D to showing them what L&D is all about. And I think some of them are like, okay, what's going on here? But yes, that's really it. And thank you so much for that in-depth analysis, Dr. Ade. And basically, as someone had mentioned on the call before too, most times success of performance management does not solely lie within the L&D team. There are other wheels, other moving motions that make things work. You might have a very perfect training, a very perfect strategy to improve performance, but if something is just not right somewhere, it can affect your work. So how are you paying attention to everything that is going on so that the blame wouldn't always be on you as the L&D professional? But like I said, this is a introductory session. We have other trainings that do more in-depth sessions for professionals already within the L&D field. So we are going to pause on this question, and I would invite Gideon to really join our community to learn more. And we'll take Omolade's question as the last question. Yeah. We don't want the newbies to
Okay.
run away that, okay, no, I'm not having this. Omalade, please go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Thank you to Miss Sarah, ever smiling host, and to all our panelists. My question goes to all of our panelists, Miss Victoria, Dr. Ade, and Mr. Joseph. My question is just that as if I'm currently a final year student studying adult education. So my question is, are there any certifications or professional courses that can, enhance my chances in securing a corporate learning role?
Okay, so I would allow one person to speak to that briefly, and that's just because, when we started the session, we did mention that we have other parts to this series that will touch on these things in depthly, but I would allow Joseph to just say a thing or two, just briefly, just to answer your question.
Okay, so when you talk about certification, I think there's something I want to say before I will recommend some certification. So continuous learning is number one. You need to join some of these MOOC platforms like Udemy, like Coursera, like LinkedIn Learning, and get as many documents that can help, because continuous learning will always beat certifications. So there are a lot of certifications. If you go to ATD, there are a lot of them. You can become a certified learning professional, and there are a lot of them out there. But then I recommend first that, being a new person, don't let certification be the first thing you are running into. Let continuous learning be the number one. And you can achieve that by signing up on all these 7,000 naira course on Udemy, 11,000 naira on LinkedIn, and all of that. So if you have gathered all of these different thoughts from different authors, then you can now look at getting certification from trainingindustry.com, atd.org, and all of that. So there are a lot of certifications on those platforms, and you can be certified as an instructional designer. You can be certified as a learning performance specialist. You can be certified as a trainer, and you can be certified as an e-learning specialist. So even as a curriculum specialist, there's a certification on it. But then, like I said earlier on, let continuous learning be your number one priority, then certification can follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joseph. And yes, I think for now, the focus should be on how you can even leverage the skills you have now to show, evidence of what you can do. Trust me, when you have, I think one thing I found out when I was trying to transition was that I didn't know what I had. And when you speak to people and you say, I studied adult education, and they'll be like, oh, really? Wow. You're the one we're looking for, something like that. So you already have something, trust me. Don't focus on, oh, I need more to add to what I have. I think for now, as a final year student, you are at a good place. You studied something that you have relevant skills to transfer. So the next step should be, where can I show what I can do? And then you're talking about certifications, in later time to come. But you can also, like Joseph said, check out free learning materials that are more specific, maybe on instructional design, on curriculum development, on talent development, and things like that. But we would be having another session to speak about this as well. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been a very insightful session. I think one thing I've learned is 1 hour 30 minutes is not enough. And I'll be taking that feedback to my team. So I would want to say a big thank you once again to Dr. Ade, to Victoria, and Joseph for being here with us. And thank you to everybody that is still here till now. If you're still here till now, it means that, you value what we are doing, and we do appreciate you. And also, if you are still here till now, please fill the feedback form if you haven't. I'll just take some few announcements before we call it a day. So like we had said, this is the first of 2 and 3 sessions, and we will be having our next session in the first month of April, which would be on competencies required. So we've spoken about these competencies briefly, but we'll do more in-depth conversations on this in the next session. The reason we are giving like a month into the next session is to give you time to reflect, time to go do your research on all what you've heard today and come back to the next session with more specific questions. And then, you know, even come back having done a bit of research into what we are going to be discussing. So please, you can use the link to register ahead of time and block this on your calendar so that you wouldn't be missing it. And then after that, we are going to, like I said, have another session on certifications and trainings. And we're going to have more persons talk to us about these things as well. You'll be surprised to hear that some of these people got the certifications maybe after 5-10 years on the job, because what you have is already like almost enough. But you know, there are some level and some positions you want to get to, then you now start talking about global certifications. So we will have that in-depth conversation in the session in May. Then also I had mentioned about our free webinar sessions that we do have. This is for people that are currently, you know, within the L&D industry. We're going to be having one on the 29th of March, which is quality management in learning and development. I really think Gideon should be on this session because yes, you might be able to get some insight into the questions you've asked today. And yeah, I think that's it from my end. Thank you so much. I did it 6:59. All right, thank you so much, everyone. And that'll be all from us at OLXD. Please look at the comment section to, you know, sign up on our links and, you know, follow us on all social media platforms. Also, do engage with the panelists. I think one takeaway or one thing we'll be expecting from you today is, you know, to engage these persons and continue the conversation. You've seen the caliber of people we have within the L&D industry. They are always ready to share. So please do, you know, connect on LinkedIn and ask your questions. I'm sure they'll be willing to give you more insight. And also share your experience about this webinar on, you know, your social media. I will be happy to see them and read about them. Yeah, on that note, I think it is thank you and bye for now. But Mr. Ade, I think you want to say something. Dr. Ade,
I just wanted to thank you guys for putting this together. And I would, you know, I want to thank my panelists. You made the job much easier. Thank you, Ms. Victoria. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Hopefully we'll connect on LinkedIn and take it off from there. Thanks, everyone.
The panelists are already connecting. They're already networking.
Yeah.
So who are we?
Oh, because we understand how it works, right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.